We are so honored that you're here with us for Season 3.
We want to share, connect, and grow the paper flower community with you. Welcome to Paper Talk. If you're looking for a way to support us, please hit subscribe and write us a review. We would appreciate it so much.
You can also support us as a patron on patreon.com. Your contribution would help us continue to create great content for you and the paper flower community. Thank you for listening to this episode of Paper Talk. Today's episode is sponsored by our patron, Jennifer Desplant. We appreciate your donation, and we're excited to keep creating content for the paper flower community. If you're interested in supporting us, head on over to our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/papertalk and sign up as a patron. We would love to see you there. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Paper Talk. Today, we have Chantal Larocque with us of Paper and Peony, and Chantal is a fellow Canadian. She works and lives out of Moncton, New Brunswick. Hi, Chantal.
Hi, Chantal.
Hi, ladies.
We're so thrilled to have you here. It's been a while since actually having connected with you a couple years back when I was starting off on my paper flower journey, and you were doing so many great things already. But if you guys don't know, Chantal has a book out. So when I was approached to write my own book, the first person I thought of reaching out to was Chantal. I was like, you know what? I need to talk to someone about this because I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. And Chantal was so nice to, give me some time of her day to answer all my questions and to really give me great advice on how to approach my publisher and what to look out for. Not to mention also, Chantal is part of our, is part of our paper flower community. And I had the honor of speaking to her on a Facebook Live a couple years ago in our Facebook group. And she had showed up with her beautiful wallflowers. I still remember that.
Yes,
and
me
I was
too.
like, oh my gosh, like that's the work that I see coming out of her Instagram page. And so we are so excited to talk to her today, a couple years later, to catch up and to see where her paper flower journey is. But Chantal, do you mind telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your paper flower journey?
Yeah, sure. Well, paper flowers, it's when I first discovered the art of shaping paper into flowers, it was just something magical. It brings me so much joy. And it all started tiny little paper flowers that I was selling on Etsy as scrapbooking supply. And the demand grew. And then at some point, some lady asked me if I can put my flowers on stems. And I was so insecure about that. I'm like, oh, what if they fall off? But I ended up doing some research and I visit my local florist she gave me tips how to use floral tape. And then after that, I did my first bouquet on stems, then it's just automatically my tiny little paper flower business went from scrapbooking supply to weddings, the wedding industry.
A giant leap.
Yeah. And I knew nothing about it. So I loved it because it was a challenge. Every day was a challenge. I had to learn it, to educate myself. And back then, like we were going back maybe 11 years ago, there was not so much in the industry as we have today. Like we're so spoiled now. We have questions. Like the other day, because I work with cardstock. So a few months ago, I had a project and the lady wanted to have a certain kind of flower, geranium. So, and I remember Laura from Too Clever. She makes most beautiful geranium. So I contacted her and asked for a few tips, and I think that's what is lovely with the paper flower community because we can help each other with our designs and, sometimes when we have to create new flowers.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're so lucky that everyone is so generous, generally with, like you said, sharing just tips, and it makes it so much easier for yourself to kind of feel confident about making a new flower as well.
So basically, just to go back to your question, as an artist, as a paper flower artist, like you just keep blooming, I guess. So the wedding industry, it was something that I had to learn a lot. Just doing some research. When there's
Can I ask you, at the time that you were starting this part of your business, was it popular for brides to ask for paper flowers, or were paper flowers popular at all?
They were just starting. And I was really busy at the time with, escort cards and place cards. It was a big trend back then to be original, at weddings. When you greet your guests, you wanted to have something different than just a list on a wall. And so escort card became really, really popular with that. And so I started with that. And then bouquet, for some reason, all of a sudden, it just exploded. And at some point, I was booking weddings like a year in advance.
Wow.
It was amazing. Like a wedding a week, like at nonstop. Like for 3-4 years, it was like crazy production.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Very, very, very busy.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed this because I learned so much from it, because every time I do a custom order for my bride, it was something I had to learn, like color palettes and texture. And sometimes they had different styles. Like I had the more modern bride who wanted to have like some black and turquoise and red, like very rock and rollish, like to the shabby chic, romantic or boho style. So it was like just this huge industry. I'm like, oh my goodness, like there's no limit, really. It's incredible. And each project made me learn something. So, and
I
then
can
you
see that.
get more and more confidence after that.
I mean, I know that you use mainly cardstock paper. When you were making those bouquets, did you make everything? Like, did you cut everything by hand? And did you make all the leaves with cardstock? Or did you mix in other mediums?
When I first started, I only worked with cardstock because that was the easy material for me to find. And in Canada, I would buy all my paper at Michael's. And back then, they were a lot cheaper. And I would look for sales and the coupons. So I would just stock up like for like hundreds and hundreds of dollars of paper at the time and just taking advantage of those sales. So Michael's was my big place where I would find supplies. And then there was a couple of like Darius. I used to buy a lot of Darius in United States for my stems and the floral tape. Like, it was so like good price. So I had to find other supplies since, but it was basically just cardstock at that time. The last few years, I haven't been as busy with wedding. I'm more selective with kind of project, but I started to include crepe paper in my bouquet, but only for the leaves, the green leaves. I find that crepe paper for this, it just gives that beautiful texture and it's just more flowy. I really, really like that. As for flowers, but my paper that I'm comfortable to work with is cardstock, and
for sure. And that's understandable. I mean, that's something that you started off with, and you've really mastered it. I mean, I followed you, I think, probably from the beginning. And I think the thing that caught my eye was how well your photographs are of your flowers. And I'm sure your flowers are beautiful in person, because normally they are actually more beautiful than the photos. But your photos capture them so beautifully, and you style them so well, as it's so well in that they show off the flowers, but also it's so recognizable. When I look at the photo, I know that it's Chantal. I know
definitely.
that your flowers, I know that it's your brand. So tell me a little bit about your approach to photographing your flowers. Do you have a certain way of doing it? Or did you, how long did it take for you to get to that point where you said to yourself, okay, this is the style that is me and represents my art?
Well, when I first started selling on Etsy, I remember I was reading an article, and that, like I said, it's 10 years ago. And it says the importance of clickable photos. So because people are scrolling, and now it's even faster these days. So you had to take some pictures that were really attractive, like they were just like, oh, okay, what is that? The lighting is very important. So back then, when I first started in my apartment, the light was really bad. And they said to use natural. So I would take all my picture outside, even when it was like below 40 degrees in the winter. I had my little set up, and I would take
That's amazing.
Oh yeah, it was really important for me for the light is
for sure.
because it shows better, your product, your flowers. And then when I moved here in Moncton, I couldn't really find a setup. It's very windy here. And I didn't have a spot where I can comfortably photograph my flowers without, going somewhere.
Bye-bye.
So I worked on a little display in a room, and I had a certain time during the day that it was in the morning. There was sun in the room, but I was not directly in the sun. I only had like an hour just to take the perfect shot for the perfect light. And then, of course, when I signed the book deal, I took all the photographs for the book. Then I invested in lighting, like
studio lighting.
Yeah, studio lighting. So I didn't have to, like, if I was finishing a product at midnight, I didn't have to wait till the next day.
But you know what, though? I mean, that says a lot about how much you feel is important, like how important you think it is to show off your work in a good light. Because a lot of us do finish our flowers at midnight, and then
we're
excited,
lazy,
we
want to take a
so
picture.
excited, you're like, I want to share it, and you take a picture, and then you post it, and like it doesn't doesn't do it justice. It's
too
spending
yellow.
Yeah, it's like
Uh-huh.
spending that time, like you said, like where there is only that hour, but you know that you want to show off your flower in the best light. So you make it that time when you do that. You make it so that
You
you're
deliver it afterwards.
Yeah.
And you give yourself a chance to like really think about it. It's like, how can I showcase my flower? And there's that time between midnight until, 10 o'clock in the morning. You're going to block that time out and you're going to make sure that you have all the right props that will make your flower even pop even better. So I think investing in that time and just blocking it out. I think a lot of us artists we're such in a rush to like, okay, we're done and we're finishing it. And then we have to deliver it. But take a deep breath and just say, I need to photograph this for Instagram, for social media, for content, for your own self. Because I think that's the most important thing is being able to look back and seeing your flowers and how you progress. Or it's like, oh, I made a peony. How did I do it last time?
Yeah.
You have a photo as a reference.
Yeah.
That's what you should keep in mind. It's like, it's more than just a rush to take a photo.
No, it's your portfolio. I mean, like I look at Chantal, I just look at your Instagram and it's
beautiful.
I know exactly, like if I was to contact you and ask for a bouquet, I know exactly what it's going to look like because it's your work is so consistent and you photograph it so consistently that I know, okay, that must be what it actually looks like. Or at the very least, I know that you have an artistic style that I love. And I know that you'll make and create something for me that will reflect your artistic style. And actually, I mean, if you don't mind, I know that before your name wasn't Paper and Peony. So let's move this discussion to a little bit of branding because your photography itself very much defines your branding. But also I know that you did switch to Paper and Peony and rebranded yourself a couple of years ago. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that decision?
Yeah, of course. When I first started, I'm a big fan of dragonflies. I think they're just the most beautiful creature. So that's why I called my business Dragonfly Expression at the time. But that was pretty, and it was people knew the name Dragonfly Expression. They knew that I was making little paper flowers. And so, when you Google that name, I was in the first few pages, it was quite incredible. But after a while, when I moved to New Brunswick, I wanted to have an image, like Nike, you see the little check marks and that's Nike. Like you see the name, you just know. Yeah. And I thought I would like to have a logo like with an image, something that represents Dragonfly Expression. So I start working with a graphic designer and she kindly suggested that, Dragonfly Expression, yes, it's pretty, but it doesn't say what I do. And then it was not at the time, like not just the importance of clickable photo, but you have to kind of quickly say to people what you are in a few words. Like what you do. Right. So I'm like, okay. And that was really scary.
I'm sure it was.
And the whole process, it was really, really difficult for me because I knew what I didn't want, but I didn't know what I want. I don't know if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. Yeah.
Like, no, I don't want that, but I don't know. It was so difficult just to, okay, I'm going to stick with this and be
go with it. Right.
Yeah. So we worked on different names. And then at some point I'm like, okay, well, I like the Paper and Peony because I said, you can do a little P, the P with the little leaves.
Oh yes. So for the logo, right? That's what
for my logo. So I had to think of that. And she says, instead of an image, because back then it was the graphics, like the scripts that was really in style, so I'm like, okay, well, let's go with that. Paper and Peony, a beautiful graphics. But I said, I want a little image that represents my business. So if you see that P, it's paper.
Yes.
It's just so different and unique to the brand.
Yes.
So for me, that was really important. I just wanted to have that beautiful image. And then of course, with time, your business grow and it's important to have a branding that represents what you do and what you are. So
yeah, so true.
It looks professional.
Yeah.
And then it was amazing. It just opened the door to many other great opportunities. The way people find my business, they go on my website and it's just, I don't know. I think it makes everything look smooth and professional. You want your brand, to look good, just as good as your flowers.
Oh yeah, for sure. So then with the graphic designer, what did you hire her to do? A logo, branding colors? What exactly did you ask her to help you do?
She did the logo, the branding colors. Like I want to have like a palette. She also there's a tagline, custom floral artistry. There you go. So she worked on that, and it's a big process because she just didn't come up with designs for me to pick, and she asked a lot of personal questions about who I am and what I like, and just so because you want the logo or the branding to represent that goes with your personality as well. It was a beautiful experience. I was really scared though when it was time to launch Paper and Peony because I'm like, oh my goodness, what if I was at the peak? I was really, really busy, and I thought maybe I'm just going to disappear.
People would be like, who's Paper and Peony? Who's this person?
But the transition went so well, and the business like doubled.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because of that, just to have that constant, everything is constant, the image. And so,
and I would say, I mean, like, if you told me your name was Paper and Peony, like you said, it's more descriptive. Dragonfly expression could be, and it's beautiful. I love dragonflies too, but it could be so many different things. Expression says to me, maybe I would have guessed maybe stationery or something like that. Paper related, but maybe but like Paper and Peony, it's so much more obvious. And I think peony as well, you choosing the word peony. So, I mean, peony in itself symbolizes so many things, and people love peonies. They probably think of pink. They probably think of something feminine, beautiful, maybe high end, maybe unique. So even like choosing the specific words of your name and changing it to Paper and Peony, I think it was a really great decision.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. And your website is beautiful as well.
The aesthetics there is just gorgeous.
Yeah, I think your graphic designer did a great job getting to know you.
Did you do your own website, or did you hire someone to do your website?
No, I did it.
Just beautiful.
I'm playing with it right now. I should update a few things, like been a few years.
I know, we always need to update our website.
But yeah, it's with it's domain. It's with Wibbly, so it's very easy for me. Like I cannot do anything too complicated. It's just
Well, I think you did a great job on it. It looks clean. Your flowers show up. Brand color is all there. Your messaging is really clear as well. I mean, I love it. I know I can see who you are behind your website, so I think it's great. I know when you were talking about your paper flower journey, you did talk about scrapbooking. Can you tell us a little bit about, how did you turn whatever you were doing, whether it was a hobby or a small business, into your paper flower business?
Right. Okay. You have time, ladies?
We do.
We're here.
Honestly, we love hearing about it because everyone's story is different. And it's so, a lot of times we hear these stories and we're like, oh my God, like you were here, and now you're back there. Like it's meant to be. There's so many little interesting, turning points. So no, we're excited to hear.
Yes, definitely.
Well, I started scrapbooking because my dad passed away, and I wanted to create a beautiful album with souvenir, moments, memories that we have together and with the family. And also I went through a big change in my life with the divorce. So when that happened, it's like your circle of friends and everything changes in your life. But I still cherish moment with really dear people, and I know to some point it can never be the same, because you change. I remarried. So my husband now, he doesn't speak English. So the friends that I had before, I'm in touch with them, but it's not the same as we used, just because of life change, right?
For sure.
Yes.
So that's
People
why
come and go. Yeah,
exactly. So I created beautiful albums, that memories that I cherish from all those people that touched me in my life. And then after that, I started to make little cards with the scrap things left over that I had. I'm like, I'm going to make some cards. And this is when people are like, oh, your cards are so pretty. I would like to buy some from you. I'm like, oh, okay. So I start making cards and selling them. And one of my girlfriends was making beautiful jewelry. So I was in Ontario. She's in Quebec. And she says, why don't we open an online shop together? And then, have different, like she'll sell us her jewelry and I would do my cards, my handmade cards. And so we did that. I think we opened a shop. I think it's Artsy or Artfire. Or an Artfire, I think. Yeah, we did that on Artfire. And it was okay. I didn't sell many cards because at the time the market was oversaturated with handmade cards. And I was a beginner. So, I mean, when you looked at all the beautiful cards the ladies were making like for years, I was just not into the competition at all. But that's when I started to sell the little paper flower as scrapbooking supply. And that just took off like hotcakes, like just like this. Yeah. From one day to another, I was like selling kits of mini paper flowers for scrapbooking all over the world. It was incredible.
Amazing.
Amazing. Yeah.
Did you do this through Etsy or through your own shop?
The scrapbooking supplies, after I realized the cards were not selling, I opened my own shop on Etsy. So, and then that's in 2010 when I opened that shop. And so I went from mini paper flowers to a little bit more 3Ds, like a little bit more volumes to the flowers. Like I would try some new shapes of petals I would find at Michael's, some punches and play with it and a little bigger. And so I would just take some pictures and different colors And I remember the first time I did a rose that was about 2 inches diameter. I posted online, and 5 minutes later, I have a lady and she says, oh, I need 80 flowers in black for like a retirement party. And I'm like, oh, okay. But I was selling them $2 each US. So I called my husband. I said, in 5 minutes, I made $180 US. I thought I was like just crazy. Like really, people are just buying like that online. Like just that rush of like, oh my goodness, there's that market. So I started to kind of really wanted to explore the whole thing, and I was really, really excited. But also the transition from like the scrapbooking to paper flower making, I think I have to thank Anna Ferrer from More Paper Than Shoes. At the time when I was first starting, she contacted me via Etsy to be part of her blog. You know, she would do like projects every month for our followers, and she needed some ladies that were like design artist. So she would give the challenges for every month, and we had to do it and then put some pictures. So our work were inspiration for like her thousands of followers.
Wow.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes.
And so I thought it was really cool. I mean, that she thought of me, you know, to do that. So
that's very generous.
And she was making those super cute 3D paper flowers. Like they were like a lot bigger than my mini ones.
Beautiful.
Booking. And I asked her how she made them. Like I was just curious. I wanted to learn. So she directed me to a couple YouTube video. At the time, there was not very many. So you just take whatever you have. And I looked at the technique, the basic techniques, and then I tried to apply that and create my own business. And from that moment, I appreciate so much Anna to give me that chance to be part of her blog and inspiration for other people, but also to grow myself as an artist, a paper flower artist. I went on my own side after like when the blog was done, you know, with it. I continued to do my work on Etsy, and she continued to do her works. But there was always this silent respect between paper flower artists. Like I really love her style, like what she do, you know, what she did. But I always worked double hard to make sure that my flowers did not look like hers. Out of respect, because for me, it's because of her. I think she gave me that little push to this is where I am right now. And Anna, she's just so generous and really sweet. Sweet girl.
Her work is beautiful. And she was also one of the first paper florists who I followed too, because she was so established actually by the time I was following her too.
So well known in the paper flower community.
Yeah. And this magical stuff that she could do with cardstock, I think that kind of blew my mind, even though I've never touched cardstock. But I mean, pretty much everything you guys do, where you literally turn a flat piece of paper into like a 3-dimensional shape art. It's amazing what you guys do. Yeah. It's so interesting what your journey is, because I mean, it sounded like every step you took was in the right direction, in the direction that you were supposed to go, in the direction that made sense to you. Yeah. And I love that you followed your intuition and your gut.
That's it. Yeah.
And then grabbing that opportunity.
And recognizing it. I think that's even more important.
Yeah. To stay true to myself, to my guts. And that's every decision I took. When I look back, I mean, it's all like it's a decade. I've been fortunate to meet the right people at the right time. And then, like you said, I followed my guts. And I never forced anything, you know, and sometimes I have to force it. Yeah. It's not me. I get bored easily, or I get impatient. So it would not work anyways. So everything, it just went so smoothly. And then I would just get like inquiries and project after another. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, okay.
Well, tell us about it. Tell us about like, what would you consider as some of your most rewarding experiences?
Well, if I go back to the beginning, when I started doing weddings, I remember one time Avon, you know, the Avon products, they contacted me for flowers for their brochure. Like they wanted to do like a photo sessions for like the jewelry spring collection. Yeah. And then they want little paper flowers. So that was for me like one of the first custom projects, not just for like a wedding but it was for marketing, like an agency, like or a big brand like that. And I thought that was really, really cool. And I saw the potential of doing more and more work like that. And then not too long after that, I was contacted by an agency in San Francisco, and I'm still working with them today.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
How did you position yourself to work more in the commercial realm? I think a lot of paper artists wants to know how they can position themselves.
I think you have to be open. Back then, like right now, I'm at a point where I'm a little bit tired sometimes. So new challenges, I don't really care so much.
No, I totally understand.
Back then, it's like I never say no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I remember the first time a lady in Florida, like a big agency asked me to do like giant paper flowers, to do 3 walls that were 8 feet by 8 feet.
Oh, wow.
And I never done giant paper flower before.
Yeah.
So like, and then, like doing the whole thing, negotiating the contract and everything. And after that, like totally panicking. But I think it's this. Sometimes it's just to not be afraid to try something new and say yes to new opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what happened. And also it goes from word to mouth. Like you do one marketing projects and the agency looked at your work. Mm-hmm. And there's 2 agencies. There's one in New York and one in California that I'm working like almost 10 years for them. So I'm in their book. Like if they need paper flowers, they come to me. Sometimes
that's wonderful. Yeah.
And you have to be ready for these type of marketing project. You have to be ready to work on a very tight deadlines.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then like for hours and hours and hours, like rush.
Can you give us an example of what you might be contacted for?
Well, okay. A few years back, the agency contacted me. It was the 3rd time I worked for Champagne, le Champagne Perrier Jouet, like the high-end brand of champagne.
Yes.
And they were doing the Miami art thing. So they wanted to have corsage, like paper flower brooches for all their guests, and they needed 3,000 paper flowers. So and these thing is, like the agency would contact me and say, okay, Chantal, we have an event that day and we would need that. Can you do it? And then I'm like, yeah, okay, I can do it. This is my price. Mm-hmm. So they have to go back to their client and it's like back and forth. And I know at all this time, like you can lose like a good 2 weeks of
like counting down time.
Like the client says, okay, Chantal, it's a go. Mm-hmm. Often things like that, I prepare myself mentally and I know the palette, I know what they want. So I start cutting because you ordering supplies because the brooches you need the magnets or you need the little pins, so all these supplies for me, like I buy them in Asia because I can order like large quantity.
That's right.
So but that takes time, so I just prepare myself mentally and physically. I'm like, okay, I said yes to that job. It's 99% I'm going to get it. They worked with me before, they're happy with what I do, and they know I can produce beautiful product quickly. I think that's the secret.
Yes, that is definitely the secret. Like they can trust you to deliver on time with what they ask, with all the things that is needed for that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then with cardstock, I know you ladies work with type paper and it's cutting. Everything is cutting. You cut everything is by hand. Yeah. Over the years with my husband, we came up with a way to cut my petals. He can cut hundreds of petals in a few minutes.
Amazing. I need to know that secret.
Like use a saw, right?
Yeah, we use a scroll saw.
Crazy.
Wow.
My husband can't do any of that.
I know my husband can't either.
And I've been so spoiled to have my husband cutting all my petals that sometimes if I have to work on a project and I don't have the specific shape and the specific color and I have to cut it by hand, I'm like hugely annoyed. I have to cut my own petals, like really, girl.
That's
awesome.
So
That's
amazing.
an awesome problem to have, though.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Teamwork, huh?
I know. It's amazing. Does your husband help you a lot on various different projects?
Yeah, he does. He does a lot of he does all the cutting, obviously. Sometimes he would do some of the shaping because my peonies, I don't know if you've seen my YouTube video or in the book, how I shape my peonies is I literally squeeze the petals inside a spoon. Those round measuring spoons.
Yes.
So you can, you can do it. You can make quite a bit of peonies during a day, but after a day that pushing the peony into it's a hard work.
For sure.
And then, so one time I was doing roses with the same technique for a window display for a Sask Fifth Avenue in Florida. Yeah. And it was for a Dior display. And it was like thousands of paper roses. And of course, the one that they wanted, it was the one that I needed to squeeze all into the spoons. I'm like, oh my goodness. So my husband, one afternoon, like he was watching the hockey game. And when he watched the hockey game, like he's really into it and he coaches the game. Really.
Through the TV.
I laid all the petals in front of him and I gave him a spoon in his hand and he started squishing the petals for me. And he's strong. So obviously he could squish like two petals stick, he can do it. Oh my goodness, that was so helpful. He did it all without noticing. Like he was coaching the video game and curl at the same time. It was amazing.
He's a multitasker. That's amazing. How rare is that?
You've got a wonderful assistant.
Yes. What a great partner to have in your life.
And then for years, is my, like he works too, like he works in construction. And since we moved to New Brunswick, it's not as busy. You know, he's not working so many hours. So when I'm busy with big contract, he takes care of cooking and cleaning. So he's been really supportive. And then of course, when I need supplies, he goes to Michael's for me.
What a wonderful man.
Yeah. I think he prefers to go to Michael's himself because he doesn't trust when I go there because I don't just buy what I need. I'm like, oh, look at this.
Yes.
It's expensive when I go by myself, so he prefers to go.
I love that. Oh my gosh.
Okay, Chantal, tell us about your book. And I know it was published a couple years ago, but tell us a little bit of, the thought behind your book, the process, and the overall experience.
When they first contacted me at Sage Street Publishing in the United States, they contacted me on my Etsy shop. And the lady starts like, I know it's not very professional to contact you here. And I'm like, okay, but what is this, right? Like, I don't know. She was insecure. I'm insecure. Anyways. She says, we really love your work. We've been following you on Instagram and we love how you interact with people. We love your flowers, your styles. And we were wondering if you'd be interested to put together a book teaching the techniques of paper flowers made with cardstock. But at first I thought it was a joke because, if they're following me, they probably see that I have a hard time to write in English. Like, I write how I sound, right? Like I can tell a lot of people when they read me in English, they know I'm French because I would reply to a client and then they're like, bonjour. I must have sounded very French when I wrote that. I guess. You want me to write a book? And I'm like, okay. But it was a long process, until I start working on the book. But they were super, super, super awesome to work with. A nice team and my editor. The only thing that they wanted is when I present my manuscript, they wanted to make sure that it was proper English. Like they have an editing, like the editors, like they can do their work for the last editing part of, but as for like the content, it had to be ready. So I wrote my manuscript in English, but my French English. And I hired a lady who edit my text. Like my English, she corrected to proper English, but because she knew me, she didn't lose my essence.
That's wonderful.
The personality, the sassiness in the text, she kept that, but using like the proper terms, for some things.
I mean, honestly, even if we do speak English fluently, doesn't mean we can write.
Exactly.
Right? It's like almost two different things. And some people, for some reason, when they're writing, their personality does not shine through. So I don't think it's just you, Chantal. Yeah. I think it's quite common. Don't doubt yourself so much because I think that your French, English, whatever, it's just you.
Well, when I write my blogs, I don't worry anymore. It does. The whole process of me writing, it takes a very long time because the orthographe and the grammaire is very important. I know I still sound French when I write, but I'm not worried so much about that. I'm like, as long as I can get my point across, that's the whole point.
That's more important.
But for the book, because it was teaching techniques, so it had to be, like the text where I describe why I did that. But when I was teaching the techniques, it had to be just proper expression that need to be
precise.
Yeah, exactly. That was a challenge, but we survived. We did that.
And you shot all of the photos by yourself, right?
I did.
Amazing.
And, people don't realize, but I had to do all the project and then photograph. And then after that, take the project, like, do the project by steps. People don't really understand. Like sometimes it's not just, I did a bouquet and take a picture. No. I have to show you how you make that flower step by step by step. Yeah. And I had my manuscript. Every time I take a picture, I'm like, okay, I have to take
double checking, right?
That step, because I'm step number 2. That's what it says. The picture had to represent exactly like, that. So there was a few things. Sometimes my editor says, okay, well, Chantal, we just need better pictures, more descriptive of what the technique is. Yeah. Actually, but it was intense work for that part. The photography.
Yeah. How long did it take you? Was it about a year?
A year. Yeah.
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 Well, I mean, your book is beautiful.
It is.
And
beautiful photography.
Yeah. Beautiful photography. I haven't read it. I mean, I've seen your work and I've seen some of your tutorials as well. And I can just imagine that the flowers in your book in terms of instructions and how you've articulated how important it is to you that you come across explaining those instructions clearly. I can only imagine that the instructions in the book would be just as as clear and concise as you want it to be.
Yeah, it was important because it's for beginners. Like if you've never made paper flower before, I don't just explain how I do my peony or how, certain type of flowers, but it's from the beginning, like to how to all the different technique to curl, like to shape your paper, the glue I use, the floral tape, how I mount the flower on stems, how I assemble a bouquet. So it's all the steps. Like if you wanted to get started with the paper flower making, the book is for you. And then of course, some of my people that are been doing that for a long time, there's some chapters where I had fun, creating for events, like a tea party or a wedding or a shower. So I did a lot of research to share information, how we can use paper flower during those events and what we can do with that. Anyways, that book is a lot of fun. And of course, the last chapter is about giant paper flowers, how I do my wall. My wall are very different than what you see most of the time on Pinterest. I don't just make one kind of flowers or one size that are side by side. I like to be very organic looking, very flowy. I like to use a lot of leaves and vines and different kind of shape of funky shape, just to make it look more fluid than just
side by side.
And that's one of the tricks I share in the book for the assembling of the wall and the material I use to create the wall. So it's a fun book. I'm really proud of it. It was a lot of work, but I'm really happy because so many people start making paper flowers, discover this beautiful art. It still makes me happy. And now I'm even happier when I know that people are finding joy in learning to make paper flowers.
Yes.
It's so much fun.
I know it is. I love art craft so much. Just crafting, cutting those petals is so soothing, and it's just wonderful to see just after an hour or two, you have a beautiful flower in your hand that you created. It's the most satisfying feeling to look at it and just like, oh, I made this.
It's magic. Like when I do my classes, but before COVID, you can do classes in person. So I was with my little group, and often, especially when it was the giant paper flowers, like they had this big sheet in front of them that I had pre-cut because I always pre-cut everything for my students. And the atmosphere in the room is always it's like if I can see a huge question marks. Like people are kind of feel a bit of insecure. They don't know what to expect. Yeah. They're like, how are we going to make giant paper flowers out of that, right? Yeah. And then after a few minutes, a few shaping technique, and then the glue gun, and all of a sudden, let me tell you, the atmosphere in the room from like the beginning, and when they complete a first flower, it's like I can feel glitter, literally. I can feel the happiness and the eyes of the people, like it's like illuminating. Yeah. It's like, oh my goodness, I just made this giant paper flower. It's like incredible. It's just that it changes completely. You
feel like a proud parent when you see them. It's like, yes, they did do it. I love that.
Yeah, that's the best feeling ever. After a class, I love it. I'm very, very happy.
And you teach a lot of classes, do you not?
Yeah, since the book came out, I started to teach classes here locally. And as much as I love creating paper flowers for clients, teaching makes me really happy. So I wanted to spend more time doing that. And of course, with the book, it's a good way to promote.
For sure.
Yeah. So
for sure. And you've already, and also in terms of time-wise, you've already made the flowers. You already have the instructions. You've already perfected the tutorial. It makes sense that you would also teach it. And some people just learn better with personal instruction.
Yeah, definitely.
They love the book for reference, but if they can get to meet the artist, that's even better. So guys,
to get the inside track.
If you guys don't have bold and beautiful paper flowers, you guys should check it out and buy it. If you look at Chantal's flowers, that's what you're going to get. You might not be able to make them as beautiful as her, but you make them your own and you learn you're going to learn amazing techniques from her as well.
Definitely.
Well, when I do my classes, every time at the end, the finished product of each student, it's exactly like mine.
I love that.
That's wonderful.
Step by step. And then if you follow that, unless you wanted to personalize, like you say, okay, I'm going to take that technique and make my own, that's okay. But when we do our class together and I teach, let's see, like a beautiful peony bouquet, and we do the 3 peonies in a flower pot. Yeah. Their bouquet is just exactly like mine.
Oh, that must make the students so happy.
I know.
And then they go home and people are like, what? You did that? And then, so that's why it's this that makes me book more and more classes and private workshop too, because people are like, oh my goodness, I want to learn to do that too. Yeah. And they can't believe they did that.
Yeah, that feeling.
Yep, that feeling. I love it.
Repeat that feeling.
And then with COVID, I moved the classes online. It's so sweet because now I can have people from all across Canada or United States. And sometimes when I do my public classes, like my regular workshop, I have people from Europe too, that is joining. And it's so nice, like it's an international.
Do you do just French classes for people that, in France or in the French Canadian part where you just run the classes in French?
Yes. Well, last week I did 2 classes and it was in French. So that was nice just to be able to.
It's when just different.
Of the heart, it's just a lot more easier, right?
Yes. All right. Now to our favorite part of the podcast is we always end the podcast with what do you drink? And if you do watch a TV show or you listen to a book, what do you listen to?
Okay. Well, when I work during the morning, I love to have my cup of coffee, a nice cup of coffee that I refill many times because I like it hot. But then sometimes when I work on easier projects at night, I like to have my glass of wine, my red wine, of course.
PP company.
And then I plug myself on Netflix or BritBox. I love to watch international kind of detective shows.
Oh, yes.
I really like that. I once, because I was really busy with the one project that was repetitive, so I didn't really have to watch, look at my hand. Yeah. So I watched a whole series, I think it was 20 episodes in Arabic with English subtitles.
Oh my God.
Talent, super talent.
So talented.
I wanted to, I started to watch the first show because I was curious, but I was intrigued by the plot. I really wanted to know who killed who. I ended up watching the whole series and my husband's like, are you crazy? I'm like, no, this is so cool. I mean, it was in Egypt, so I get to travel watching the series.
Oh my God, you're amazing doing that.
Yeah.
But I always tell Quinn, I can't watch these Korean dramas because I have to read the subtitle. How do I do it when I'm making paper flowers?
You have to do something that
really repetitive. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
You got to find the right show for the right project.
Yes. Can I do a recommendation for you guys? It's on Netflix. It's called Behind Her Eyes. It's a British mystery and it's really complex. And there's a really weird twist at the very end that's very surprising. My husband and I watched it and we guessed it right before they told us, but it was only maybe 10 minutes. But they kept you on your toes and you were like, oh my God, what's going to happen? So it's very intriguing. So Behind Her Eyes.
I love British shows, I really do, like BritBox, BritBox. Oh my goodness, it's such a beautiful selection.
Well, yeah, the British they have their own wonderful film industry. One of my friends actually works for the film industry. She's Canadian, but she moved over there because there's just so many opportunities to develop national television there. But they do a lot of, murder mysteries. So I can see how you could be addicted to it, Chantal.
Thank you so much for being on our podcast. We really enjoyed talking to you and just hearing about your paper flower journey. It's amazing.
It's so interesting.
I can't believe the hour went by so fast.
I know.
We can go on and on, right?
I know. Well, there's so much. There's so much. You've been through so much and you do so much, so many little different things. It's really interesting. Yeah, because a lot of our listeners are, we have a range, a gambit of people from different places, different levels, different experiences. It's really interesting hearing from you because you started so early. And while the industry was different back then, just the opportunities you were able to take on and recognize, I think that can teach a lot of us about how to approach these types of opportunities. And if you don't mind me asking you, what did you think was, and I know our hour's up, but how did you know, for example, when these agencies contacted you, what made you know that it was the right project for you? Because you had mentioned before, there was some that you would sign the contract and you would freak out. So somehow
it's really hard to tell because I think it depends on the communication. I'm very sensitive of how people will approach me. And just, when there's inquiries, I have a vibe, I can feel it. And I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of, I like the way they approach, the respect also they have toward me as an artist. It's not just okay, well, when you do that, then they don't care. I see that, I feel this good vibe. I'm like, okay, even though it's probably going to be something new for me or different, I can just, it's like a leap of faith, you know, you just take it. And then after that, like you rush. I mean, it's not easy. It's huge. It's challenge. But once you're done and then your client is happy and then they share pictures with you after like the event of what they did with your creation. I mean, it's so rewarding. Answer how I know. I think it's just like a gut thing. It's same with when I signed the contract with Canada Post. Obviously, they wanted to have crepe paper flower for the stamps. And for me, I never done crepe paper flowers before. So that was a big thing. And I was nervous, but I'm like, I cannot just say no to this opportunity. Like, this is great. I mean, it's a privilege to have your artwork feature on such a, you know, like
it's a timeless piece because people will collect the stamps and then generation down, they will see it.
Yeah.
What an honor to be asked to do that.
Yeah.
But this whole thing too, this whole process, it was the way I was approached as an artist, the respect the person, the agency had toward me, the way they asked, you know, about this whole thing. It's all about vibes like that. Yeah. And then if I feel comfortable, the way they contact me, the way they communicate with me, then I'm like, yeah, okay. Even though I've probably never done that before and I'll have to learn and go crazy for a few days, it's worth it because it was done with respect. That's important.
Yeah,
that's great.
You know, you're a person, you're an artist, you're not just a, you know, production crazy. You wanted to have your art to be recognized and appreciated.
For sure. That's great.
Thank you. That was a great response.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. That was, I think,
Thank you so much for joining us each week and listening to Paper Talk Podcast. This week's podcast is sponsored by Paper to Profit.
So in chapter 5, we talk about shipping and packing, which is very, very important in our line of work. So Quinn, tell us a little bit about how you pack your paper flowers so that, you know, they'll arrive safely.
Yes, I borrow a lot from the floral design side, the fresh flower people, because it's already been done. They've been doing it for decades. And if their system's not broken, hey, use it. So they talk a lot about mechanics and things, how to ship things. Apparently their product's a lot more fragile than ours. Ours can be a little bit more sturdy and a lot more lightweight, and you never have to worry about a water source, which is fantastic. So for shipping, it's very important that your boxes are going to be double walled. I'm saying that there's a little bit of congruent packing in between the cardboard box. You don't want a very thin and flimsy one because you never know what's going to happen during shipping time. I hate to say this, but sometimes shippers, they throw the boxes across the room or they just throw it against the wall and they're not mindful. So it's your job to make sure that your flowers are secured and safe and reinforced inside the box. I try not to use any peanuts. I know there's a lot of peanuts out there that are more eco now, which is so fantastic. But I found that if I just use really simple tools, just like a foam cord where I kind of cut the foam cord down, but it's still intact, and I just fold it up like almost like a paper airplane, and it kind of keeps the wall from collapsing down on itself. That's been one way for me to reinforce the inside of the box. And then I just zip tie or wire tie the individual stems onto the foam cord itself. Or if I'm actually sending out a bouquet, I've actually, because it's quite large, I have this great box. I use 14 by 14 where the whole arrangement can actually go inside the box itself. I cut my foam cord diagonally. And so one side of the foam cord is actually the flower bouquet tied in, already arranged, ready to go. All they have to do is just untwist the ties and then the arrangement's there. It's already been hand tied with a ribbon and ready to use on the day of their wedding. And then on the other side, I always make sure it packed really pretty. So there's tissues that they can open to reveal because they literally spent hundreds of dollars. I want to make sure that their flowers are beautiful. And also when they unbox it, it's going to be beautiful and magical at the same time. So think about your branding and how you would actually make it happen. I always include how to take care of your paper flowers and a personal note for myself, wishing them the most magical wedding day, something along that line. But just a little note saying that, just thanking them for trusting myself to make their flowers for their special day because it's going to last for a really, really long time. How about you, Jessie? What do you do?
That special touch is so important. I mean, if you imagine yourself like receiving an order from, you know, your favorite artist and opening it up, that experience is it is magical. Yeah, I do make sure that my box is branded, but because I don't shove out a ton of things, in the past, I've used a rubber stamp with my logo on it, but recently I've been using stickers instead. Stickers, they're so much easier. And because I can also add a little bit of color to it. So I just use the stickers, and I use, at least 3, 2, 1 on each side and then 1 at the top. And it's really nice when people get to open it and they like get to cut into your logo. It's like something, it's like just for them. They know it's never been opened until they do. So it's really nice. I did try the foam core trick with my sunflower, and yeah, it held. My understanding is that it held out very well, but I also did double box it as well, just because I was paranoid about this one. But I can, imagine the foam core would be great at holding up the walls. What I've done in the past is I just use another box. So if there's another box lying around, which I usually do have another box lying around, I'll cut that up and put it on the sides and the corners so that it is sturdy, especially for my bouquets. With stems, I have tied them down in the past, either with foam core or just cardboard. It just depends on how it fits. But, surprisingly, stems hold up really well in boxes, especially because when I make them, I'm very careful with what I use to make them. And so if I know I'm shipping them really far, I don't tend to use very fragile paper, unless if it's like literally like tied down to something. But if not, then, it's laminated. It's pretty durable. The same thing with my bouquets. And I've padded them a lot, and they've always arrived, as far as I know, well. But I do sometimes get paranoid about, maybe the shipper's putting something directly on top of a box. My boxes tend to be like 22, 18, and then, 10 inches. So it's like really big without something in the middle, like the bouquet's right in the middle. Then I will put something in the middle, whether it's a little triangle that reinforces it or something or other, just to make sure that there's nothing that's going to be really heavy on top and placed right in the middle. And I always, use I've done 2. Depending on the size of the box, I will put the entire box into a clear plastic bag, like a clear garbage bag, and tie it up and then wrap it up. Or I will use packing tape and just tape the entire thing, because I'm super paranoid about water. Even though when I ship things out, I always pay for the signature. I don't know why people don't pay for signature. Like somebody's sent me something that's $400 and they didn't pay for a signature. It got lost, actually. And I don't want that to happen to my baggage. I'm like really paranoid. And we also make things out of paper, right? So you can't just leave it in the porch, but you can't control what couriers do. Some people just whatever, and they just leave it there. I get really paranoid about that. So waterproofing my boxes are a priority for me, because you never know.
Yeah. And the best deal, you guys, for clear packing tape is Costco. If you have a Sam's wholesale, that is seriously the best price.
And it's good too.
Yes. It's really thick. It's more high quality. So instead of putting a plastic bag inside my box, because to me that really lowers the quality or the magical feeling, I really...
Oh, mine is on the outside.
Yeah. Oh, on the outside. So
on the outside.
I really use the clear masking tape on all the corners, all the seams.
Yes.
And when you look at my box, you're like, whoa, that is very taped up. But you know what? It actually keeps the box more secured from maybe someone poking a hole, because I actually had somebody ship me something and it got broken and there was a giant hole in the box. Oh, and I was just like, oh my gosh. But so I always make sure that I really tape up my boxes. Yeah. So if you've seen some of my packaging, it is very taped up.
I know. It's worth it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, as long as it gets there, and I know like a lot of mine are shipped like outside of Canada. Like, I don't know how far it has to go, right? Yeah. So just in case, I think it's better safe than sorry.
Yeah. And I see some crazy shipping. Sometime I'm following or tracking the box, and it literally just has to go from Seattle to Texas. But I see it going to Chicago, then New York, and then Florida, and then to Texas. Like, that is such a roundabout way of doing it. And I feel like I always pay for not ground shipping. I always make sure that it's a few days. So the reason behind it is maybe it won't get lost because I paid a higher premium for it. And what I do is I just pass that cost directly over to the client. Yeah. And I make it their decision. It's like, do you want it on this? I recommend this because of my experience, and you explain why. And when you do explain why, they always says, yes, I do want that, because people always want the cheapest thing, but sometimes the cheapest thing is not the best thing, you guys.
I think that's what happens when people do like a flat fee, like when you buy from the website and they just say, okay, it's just a flat fee and it's always going to be the cheapest one. But as the seller, like honestly, as an artist, I don't want you to pay for the cheapest one. And I don't want to save my money because of that. Like you said, I just pass it on and I just tell them, I actually only give them those options that I want, because I don't think at the end of the day, it's worth the risk that it's going to get lost because someone else chose to be cheap about it, or you want to save money. And then you have to actually remake it, or you have to and then the customer's not happy, right? You can't blame the customer for choosing an expensive shipping, but you can give them only options that you want. And then what are they going to do?
Ship out 3 weeks before the due date. Do not leave it last minute because one, what if you do have to remake it? You're going to be scrambling.
Yeah.
And that would be the worst thing ever. So think about it.
Yeah. Lots to think about.
If you're looking for a way to support us, please hit subscribe and write us a review. We would appreciate it so much.
You can also support us as a patron on patreon.com. Your contribution would help us continue to create great content for you and the paper flower community.